The deal to reopen the government drives a wedge between Democrats, leading to calls for a change in leadership.
This is the culmination of someone who just doesn't get it, who doesn't get where the base of this party is.
I'm Georgia Howe with Daily Wire executive editor John Bickley. It's Tuesday, November 11th, Veterans Day, and this is Morning Wire.
Florida launches a probe into JPMorgan Chase, accusing the banking giant of helping Biden's Operation Arctic Frost target Trump.
It's come to our attention that JPMorgan debanked Trump Media Group, a Florida-based company, right before the business went public.
And on this Veterans Day, we talked to a retired Marine Corps major about how the shutdown has affected veterans and service members, and how the new administration has lifted morale for our troops.
Thanks for waking up with Morning Wire. Stay tuned. We have the news you need to know.
Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. Look, our personal information is all over data broker websites, and getting it removed is a huge hassle. That's where Delete Me comes in. Just tell them what you want deleted, and their experts remove your data from hundreds of data broker websites. They'll even send you a regular report showing what they found, where it was, and what they removed. The best part, it's not a one-time thing. Delete Me constantly monitors and removes your personal information as it pops back up on these sites. Take it from me, this really works. I still get those reports emailed to me to see where they found my info on the web, and spam calls are at a new low. I don't really get them that much anymore. So take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me, now at a special discount for our listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/wire and use promo code WIRE at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/wire and enter code WIRE at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/wire, code WIRE.
After the Senate reached a deal to end the government shutdown, hard-left Democrats are taking aim at those who worked toward a compromise.
Daily Wire reporter Amanda Prestigiacomo has the latest on the deal and the fracture it's caused within the Democratic base. Hey, Amanda, so let's start on Capitol Hill. What is the mood there?
Yeah, well, cautious optimism is probably the best way to describe it. After the Senate reached a breakthrough Sunday night, they moved forward with a procedural vote, and they convened again Monday afternoon to wrap up the final details. And finally, they passed a clean continuing resolution to keep the government funded through January 30th. Obviously, the next step for this bill is to head back to the House, and Speaker Mike Johnson has already called his members back for a vote. And while it will be close, Johnson said it's expected to pass and that President Trump is on board, so that'll help push any Republicans who might still be on the fence. Overall, this progress was welcomed by federal workers, air travelers, and especially investors. Markets jumped at the apparent agreement. The NASDAQ, for example, that surged a whopping 2%, and the Dow and the S&P 500, they each closed just off record highs. But not everyone is excited about this news. A number of high-profile Democrats on Monday, they criticized the looming deal. Social media erupted yesterday with calls for Minority Leader Chuck Schumer to step down. Democrat House member Ro Khanna, for example, he tweeted that Schumer is no longer effective and should be replaced. Here's another quote. "If you can't lead the fight to stop healthcare premiums from skyrocketing for Americans, what will you fight for?" Obviously, that's very significant to see elected officials go on the record like that with that sort of criticism. For his part, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, he stood by Schumer. He said Schumer was effective and should keep his position. Here's Jeffries from the Capitol yesterday.
Leader Schumer and Senate Democrats over the last 7 weeks have waged a valiant fight on behalf of the American people. And I'm not going to explain what a handful of Senate Democrats have decided to do. That's their explanation to offer to the American people.
Now, this saga puts Schumer in an even more precarious position. He was already facing a possible primary challenge from Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's obviously very far left. And it's worth noting he publicly opposed this deal to end the shutdown, and he ultimately voted against it. So that leaves two possible explanations. First, that Schumer supported it privately and he allowed these 8 Democrat senators to vote yes. By the way, none of those Democrats face re-election next year. So there was, obviously some strategy behind that. Or, second, there's this possibility that Schumer really did oppose a compromise. And that could be even more concerning for Democrats because it would mean he doesn't have full control of his caucus.
Right. Either way you cut it, the optics aren't great for him here. And we also heard from plenty of angry Democrats outside of Washington, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you can tell how the left-wing base is feeling by looking at the party's 2028 hopefuls and how they responded. California Governor Gavin Newsom, for example, he called it pathetic. He said, "This isn't a deal, it's a surrender. Don't bend the knee." AOC said that people want us to hold the line for a reason. This is not a matter of appealing to a base. It's about people's lives. And Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, he said this isn't a deal, but an empty promise. We heard similar condemnation from people like Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, and Ruben Gallo, and, the list goes on there. Behind closed doors, many Democrats felt that a compromise just wasn't necessary here because they're winning the messaging battle. And polling does back that up. The latest numbers from a Washington Post and ABC poll showed that 45% of Americans blame the GOP for the shutdown, while 33% blame Democrats. And 63% of Americans say they disapproved of Trump's handling of the federal government, while independents said Republicans deserve more blame by a 2-to-1 margin. Regardless, it appears that Democrats did blink first here, and Republicans and Donald Trump may come out of this shutdown with another political victory.
All right, so the GOP potentially pulling victory from the jaws of defeat here. Amanda, thanks for reporting.
You're welcome.
I found a valuable tool that gives me insights to create a healthy metabolism for my body. It's called Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It measures your metabolism through your breath and lets you know whether you're burning fat or carbs, giving you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and stress management, which we could probably all use these days. All I do is breathe into my Lumen first thing in the morning, and then I know exactly what's going on with my metabolism. Then Lumen gives me a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on my actual measurements. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns food into fuel. Optimal metabolic health means easier weight management, improving energy levels, better fitness results, and better sleep. Lumen provides crucial insights and helpful guidance to improve your metabolic health. But it also requires effort and lifestyle changes to see those results. Winter is the perfect season to build strength from within. Stay energized, stay resilient, and take charge of your metabolism. Head over to lumen.me/wire to get an additional 10% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/wire for 10% off on top of any offers or sales running through their website.
Florida's top prosecutor notified one of the world's largest banks on Monday that it's under investigation for its role in the Biden administration's controversial Arctic frost probe.
Here to tell us more about the investigation is Daily Wire reporter Tim Pierce. So, Tim, Florida's Attorney General James Uthmeier is going after JPMorgan. What do we know about the allegations?
So this was a story broken by our own Mary Margaret Olahan. She got the first look at the letter Uthmeier sent to JPMorgan Chase. Here's what she said about it.
This investigation was prompted by information that was released by the Senate Judiciary Committee talking about how special counsel Jack Smith's Arctic frost investigation into Trump had targeted hundreds of Republican individuals and entities with subpoenas. Now, Uthmeier suspects that JPMorgan Chase was providing sensitive banking info to the Department of Justice and to Smith as part of the malicious prosecutions into the president. That's how he phrased it. And the attorney general told me that the bank was asking many questions of Trump Media, its client, questions that were seemingly unrelated to its business. Now, JPMorgan did not directly address the Monday letter when we reached out, but a spokeswoman told me that JPMorgan follows the law in responding to subpoenas from the government and will continue to do so. She also stressed that JPMorgan doesn't discriminate against anyone based on politics, saying it's terrible that people can lose their bank accounts because of broken policies that encouraged banks to be overly cautious, adding, it's not fair and it shouldn't happen, and it's great that this administration is finally bringing needed regulatory change we've been requesting for years.
So a great scoop there by Mary Margaret.
And some aggressive action from Florida's AG, it sounds like. Now, one individual who's facing a lot of the backlash from the Arctic frost probe is Judge James Boasberg. Why is he in hot water?
Yeah, you're right. Boasberg was the judge who signed these warrants for the FBI to go after the phone records and essentially spy on about a dozen Republican lawmakers. That has sparked more than a few calls for Boasberg to face some sort of accountability over this. Here's GOP Senator Eric Schmidt.
But Judge Boasberg, what he did to Senator Cruz and maybe other senators, absolutely, and I don't say this lightly, absolutely is worthy of impeachment proceedings. There has to be accountability.
Here's Congressman Byron Donalds.
I do want him impeached. He needs to go because you have a judge who has a responsibility to uphold the law. But what he participated in is the largest spying operation against your political rivals in American history. Everybody loves to talk about Watergate with Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon never even dreamed of something like this.
Now, Boasberg, as the Chief Justice of the D.C. District Court, was the one who had to review the applications for phone records and sign off on them, as well as the gag orders related to those applications. We still don't know what was in those applications. A lot of the material that Boasberg reviewed for them is classified and it's not open to the public. But because Boasberg has discretion in approving these applications, many Republicans think he needs to be looked into for possible violations of the Constitution. Specifically, they say he may have violated the speech and debate clause, which protects lawmakers from law enforcement actions based on their congressional work. So another potential investigation brewing there.
Well, we'll see if there's any momentum for that. Tim, thanks for reporting.
Good to be on.
On this Veterans Day, we wanted to take a moment to look specifically at how the events of the last 40 days have impacted our veterans and service members.
Joining us now to discuss that and more is retired Marine Corps Major and CEO of Lovell Government Services, Chris Lovell. Chris, first, thank you for your service and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
So it looks like we have an end in sight for this government shutdown, but I wanted to ask you about how this has affected veterans and service members in particular. What kind of impact have we seen so far from the government shutdown on them?
There's been a little anxiety, John, with some veterans, not sure whether you get paid or not, the active duty forces. There was 2 paydays where that was in question. The administration did the right thing. They ensured they were paid. In terms of the veterans post-service, the VA has suffered slightly with some outreach programs that would otherwise not have been affected if the shutdown was not an issue. Things like vocational and rehab for like transitioning services for when veterans are getting out. I think there's a backlog now of about 10,000 at last count. But yeah, by and large, it's there's a little bit of anxiety overall. Like, hey, is this gonna end? And am I gonna get the services that I earned?
Right, and we've covered here how that one-time payment was possible, but going forward, it was really unclear if the Trump administration could keep that up. About the Trump administration, more broadly speaking, how has this new administration impacted the lives of military service members?
I think as the commander-in-chief, from my perspective, from what I'm reading and hearing and talking to active duty members, it's encouraging that the commander-in-chief has their back and has said as such in terms of making sure that the active duty forces get their pay without delay. Lovell Government Services, my company, we hire tons of Marines and we had a cake cutting ceremony and we talked about J.D. Vance, right? The vice president, the first Marine to be in the White House. And for the troops, what a morale booster to see, the vice president, former enlisted Marine at the highest levels of government doing great work.
How do you feel the morale is in general with the Marines now?
The Marine Corps has never been stronger in terms of morale. There's just the sense of mission. J.D. Vance mentioned at a Marine Corps ball that it's the administration's desire that the Marines get clear guidance, and the guidance would be that they're trained and equipped to be the most lethal fighting force, and that when they're tasked to go somewhere, they go somewhere and they kick hind parts, and then they have a clear objective and come home.
Final question, with this being Veterans Day, how do you think we can best preserve the legacy of our military service members?
Yeah, I think it's great. Even if you're not a veteran, I would encourage you to go to a Veterans Day ceremony. If you have friends and family that served, reach out to them, ask them about their time in service. What was their favorite times? What did they do that they remember the most, that brought them the most satisfaction? And I like to think of veterans that influenced me as a young man. And one of those people are Major James Capers. He's a Silver Star winner, served in Vietnam, and right now his Medal of Honor is pending at the highest levels of the Secretary of War's office. He's 88 years old. And he did some superhuman things that I think are well deserving of the Medal of Honor. In high school, I remember seeing his posters. He had a poster out there of him with, this caption, "Ask a Marine." I didn't know who Major Capers was. I didn't know his backstory. All I knew is that guy had something. He was tough, and I wanted to be like him. So it was one of the reasons why I joined the Marines. And so I think it would be fitting, to mention Major Capers.
Well, happy Veterans Day, and thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for waking up with us. And for the veterans out there, thanks for your service. If you're listening, you can now also watch the show for free on Daily Wire Plus. We'll be back later this evening with more news you need to know.
Running a small business is anything but small. For business owners, it's all-consuming from day one. Every decision feels massive and new challenges arise daily. What makes the biggest difference, though, is having the right platform with all the tools needed for success, one that grows the business and simplifies the complex decisions that come with entrepreneurship. That's where Shopify comes in. Shopify's point-of-sale system acts as your unified command center, seamlessly connecting in-store and online operations across up to 1,000 locations. This means customers can shop however they want, whether that's endless aisle browsing, buying online and picking up in the store, or traditional shopping, while your staff has everything they need to close the sale every single time. But here's the real advantage. Since acquiring customers costs so much, Shopify POS helps you keep the ones you have through personalized experiences and first-party data that gives your marketing team a real edge. The proof is in the numbers. An EY report shows businesses using Shopify POS see a 22% better total cost of ownership and an average 8.9% sales boost compared to the competition. Get all the big stuff for your small business right with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period and start selling today at shopify.com/morningwire. Head over to shopify.com/morningwire. Again, that's shopify.com/morningwire.